Most conversations, especially feedback conversations, they're doomed from the start because we skipped a step and we've let the frustration or the concern or the worry build too much in our mind, and we've made up too much of a story about what's really going on without just asking a question or making an observation of something we've seen. The mention is a way to diffuse that. The mention is the first step in the accountability dial, and all it is a question or an observation, and your goal is to create a shared reality around something you're seeing. It might sound like, hey, do you have a second? I noticed in this morning's stand-up you seemed a little bit frustrated when Marcus was talking. The distinction that's important here is that the mention is not a feedback conversation. You don't know why what's happening is happening. You may have some ideas based on past experience, but it's really just your attempt to start the conversation and to start dialogue and to demonstrate that you're open to hearing and understanding that things may be different than you would have assumed. The time to make a mention is when you notice something. You'll know because you'll have a question in your head of, I wonder why they did that, or I wonder why we're doing it that way, or I wonder why they used that tool, or I wonder if they're asking these questions. It's that wonder. Trust your judgment, trust your intuition, trust your own process for knowing you're part of the business. So when you see things and you're wondering and thoughts are going through your head, that's your sign. It's time to use the mention. The mistake you can make is waiting too long. You don't have to have perfect data. You don't have to know exactly what to say or when to say it. Each moment that you wait increases the likelihood that things are going to build in your mind, and you're going to make up a story about what's happening or why it's happening and why this person is behaving in this way. And it's probably not true. You got to find a way to use mentions and use this process in your own voice, but a lot of times it'll sound like, hey, I noticed X and it made me wonder why. You're starting from a place of curiosity. It goes counter to the way most of us operate, where we want a solution and we want to know what's next. Keep it short, ask a question, make an observation, and wait for the response. There's no set time for how long a mention is. It could be 5 seconds in a hallway. It could be a Slack message or something that you do over the phone. It's not about how long it is, it's about the tone and the spirit. It's just about you intervening and saying, there's something I'm curious about or something I noticed, and I wanted to say something now rather than wait. So here's a couple of examples of what mentions might sound like. Let's start with a positive mention. Maybe someone on your team really went the extra mile on a project or on a proposal to a client. Take a moment to let them know, hey, I saw that proposal that went out and I really appreciate the extra care that you put into the conclusion. I think it was a really great example that they're going to understand and really see the value of our work. And mentions can be used for very practical operational things like keeping track of your time if that's important on your team. So a mention might sound like, hey Jeff, so I noticed that you didn't get your timesheet in this week and you usually do. Is there something going on? You're making an observation of something that you saw, something that has the potential to be concerning, even if it might not be really concerning right now. You're getting out ahead of it and you're letting them know and communicating that it's something that's important to you. There are a lot of ways to miss the point of what a mention should sound like. One of the common mistakes people make is they make a successful mention, but they don't wait for the response because that moment can be a little bit awkward. There might be silence. So here's an example of what filling the silence might sound like. So you might say, hey, I've picked up this thing in our last one-on-ones. It seems like you're kind of scrambling or juggling a lot of things. Is that what your experience has been? But rather than waiting for their response, you jump in right away and you say, oh, I know how that is, and I've got a million things going on too, and I'm feeling overwhelmed, and I wonder maybe next week will be better, right? So you missed the moment to actually hear what they had to say. Maybe they're not feeling that way. Maybe they are feeling that way and it's way worse than you think. But if you fill the silence, you don't get to learn. Another thing to look out for, it's related to filling the silence, is expecting an immediate response. Remember, the mention is just the first step. It's a casual or informal question or an observation. It's not you leaning into the space demanding an answer in that moment or even the same day. Depending upon what the topic is, it probably needs a little bit of self-reflection. So give your colleagues space to reflect, give them some time to think, and maybe even let them know, hey, I don't need an answer right away. We can talk about it later or even tomorrow. Another thing to look out for is what we call making it a we thing. It's something that we do often when we're feeling nervous or insecure, or we have the sense that the person is taken aback by what we're asking them about. But instead of just making our mention, asking a question, an observation, and letting it sit with that person, we go really quickly to what can we do to solve it? Or what can I do to make it better? And there might be something for you to do, and maybe there's a we part of it. Simply start with your observation or question and wait for their perspective before you worry about what's something that you might do together or what might be on your side. Use mentions for both positive and negative observations. Keep it short, 5 to 10 seconds max, or if it's in an email or over messaging, a sentence, maybe 2. Start with an I statement or a question. Don't make an accusation. Don't expect or push for a response right away. Give them space to think. Remember to actually listen. Once you've made your mention, you've taken the first step. Now the job is to wait, to let it go, and to see how they respond to the question or observation that you've made. In the next video, you're going to work on crafting a mention based on different scenarios and how to implement it with your team.